I've got a newfound confidence in the Washington Nationals, not just turning this thing around in a few years, but getting this team in a very good spot to be one of the best analytical teams in all of baseball.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And I'm your host, Ryan Clary. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. Later on in today's program, we'll have a discussion surrounding MacKenzie Gore and CJ Abrams, as the rumor mill still moves around those two guys. But I'm going to tell you why trading in MacKenzie Gore, while it might seem a little bit backwards, trading your best pitcher, that will make your team better. I'll explain why I believe in that and how it could make the Nationals better later on in the show today. But I also have the same argument for CJ Abrams, except a little bit different. So I guess it's not the same argument. I think that if you do trade CJ Abrams, at least at this point, I don't think it makes you that much better. I'll tell you why later on in the program today. But we start off discussing really just getting into Ani Kilambi, the new Nationals GM, and how I have this newfound confidence in the Nationals being one of the best analytical organizations now, and how they will get there. But most importantly, I've got new confidence in the new direction. But today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long at FanDuel.com. I have got this confidence in the Nationals that, yes, with this new direction, there are going to be a lot of growing pains, I think, for fans, but also the organization as a whole. But I feel as if that right now, if you're a Nats fan out there, how can you not be more confident in the direction from the team right now compared to just 1 year ago? Or even forget that, how about 6 months ago in the middle of June when the Nationals are losing 10 straight games? I feel as if that the Nationals have set themselves up to be a very good, and if not one of the better analytical teams in all of baseball. Now, that is not going to happen overnight, but there is a new direction of this team. And I think that the direction is that they are going to use analytics and data in their favor. Now, if you look at the hires this offseason, it starts with Paul Toboni. You get Paul Toboni, who was one of the most important figures in the Red Sox organization, and he helped reshape their player development system. And obviously with the Red Sox, when you look at what they have done, they've got stars like Roman Anthony. They brought in guys like Alex Bregman. They have developed some stars. Brian Bellows, a really good pitcher there. Connolly Early, someone that he has mentioned a lot, seems to have a very bright future in their system, and a ton of other players as well. Marcelo Mayer as well. There are so many different players in that Red Sox team that you can look at Paul Toboni and say he had his hands on that kind of hire there, and kind of just looking at that player development regime. And then you look at the Nationals' new GM, Ani Kilambi, coming over from the Philadelphia Phillies, working under Dave Dombrowski, something that Paul Toboni has also done when he was with the Red Sox. Ani Kilambi is now like this R&D analytical expert at just like 31 years old, who is now a general manager of a Major League Baseball team. This is something that the Nationals have hit a home run on, and that is getting a new direction in this building. When you talk about some of the biggest needs from the Nationals the past really decade plus, it's been player development and analytics. Now, when people say analytics, like, what does that mean to you? Analytics, in my mind, and just kind of how it drives baseball nowadays, is what you see with technology and different pitching arcs and different analytics and data that go into every different little thing that a baseball team has nowadays. Baseball is such a technological game at this point, and it's a different sport if you look at it just from 20 years ago today even. You now use these equations and these crazy statistics to try to find trends. And I think that is kind of what will separate the Nationals apart from these other teams. Now, also, let me just say this, because I think that when people hear analytics and when they hear data and they hear this analytically driven team, you think of teams like the Rays. You think of teams like the Pirates and the Cleveland Guardians, teams that don't necessarily spend. Now, you could take that and run with it if you would like. But then also, there are teams out there like the Dodgers. The Dodgers are one of the most advanced teams, analytically speaking. And if you look at what they pay, there is no like cutting corners there. Because I think that's what it comes down to here. When people do hear that, they might say like, oh, well, look at the Rays. They don't spend money and they haven't won a World Series. Okay. But what about if you look at the Dodgers? The Dodgers have won back-to-back World Series. They're probably going to win a third one this season as well. And they have set themselves up to be a very good team for the next decade plus. Probably one of the best teams in all of baseball. And they might be one of the greatest dynasties of all time when it's all said and done. Truly, that's how good they are. Analytics has set themselves up for that. And yes, you can work like the Rays and try to cut corners and be that smart, driven team that is able to develop prospects left and right. But I feel as if that right now, the Nationals may do that, but also, they also may be the team that has analytics and are a step ahead of everybody else while also spending the money. That is going to be the biggest question surrounding this rebuild, in my opinion. Because right now, the direction of this team is analytics and player development. They are answering the two biggest questions that we have with the Nationals. But the third biggest one is going to be what ownership will be doing in free agency. Will they eventually open up the checkbooks? That is probably your biggest question today. And that is a fair question to have that, quite frankly, I don't have the answer to say here today confidently that they will spend or that they will not spend. I don't know how the Nationals will approach free agency moving forward. This season, I think it's safe to say this. They are not going to sign an Alex Bregman or a Kyle Tucker. That's just not in the pockets at this point. It's not going to happen. But I do think that right now, the Nationals are doing everything in their power to do what's right. And they are addressing in my opinion, the two biggest needs. Because last offseason, when we were talking about, oh, maybe they bring in, I don't know, an Alex Bregman. 2 years ago, maybe they bring in a Rhys Hoskins to come help this team. Like, yes, those guys help you today, but does it make you a playoff team? No. If they make some savvy trades, does it make them an 81, 82, 83 win team? Probably not. But I also think they have addressed their two biggest concerns. And I do think that right now, today, if you were to lay out on the table spending in free agency, player development, and analytics and data, and getting that new direction, the third biggest need of those things would be spending. Because you can't have a Dodgers budget. It's just not going to happen. We're in Washington, D.C. This is a big market, but it's not the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're a different just kind of show down there. But the two things that you can control that smaller markets do spend on is player development and data, analytics, and an R&D department. You have addressed those two things now. The biggest question will be that third option, spending in free agency moving forward. And that will be up to ownership. That is something that Paul Toboni and Ani Kilambi have zero say in moving forward. That is the obvious here. So I think that right now, the Nationals have done the best possible thing that they can do this offseason. Spending will be a conversation that we will have down the road. I do not think it is necessary today to think that the Nationals will actually spend in free agency. In fact, it's probably not going to happen today. We all kind of know that. But moving forward, this team has a new direction, and it has set ourselves up for a conversation to be had down the road that if you do bring in that big-time veteran like an Alex Bregman, does it get you over the hump? Does it get you back in October baseball? If you address those two things, which the Nationals have, and if they execute those two things with data and player development, spending will be a much larger conversation to have someday. And I don't know if that conversation is going to happen today, but I can tell you this much. They have addressed the two biggest things. You have a new direction. You understand where this team is going. It's no more like, oh, next year's going to be our year, or maybe we will spend, or maybe you'll have this prospect develop. No. This will be better. I do think that right now, the Nationals have set themselves up to be in a much better place, to maybe, just maybe, be able to contend and maybe go all in on free agency in just the next couple of seasons. But that's a conversation that we'll have someday down the road here. But I do want to tell you guys this, because the biggest story of the Nationals offseason, while it has been this new direction, while it's been bringing in Toboni, bringing in Kilambi, bringing in Devin Pearson, guys like that, and really experienced guys who have done the player development thing before, who have done analytics, bringing in a new coaching staff with Blake Butera and his background, I'm going to tell you why. This may seem a little backwards to you, but why MacKenzie Gore in a trade might make this team even better in 2026. I'll tell you exactly why I think that after this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and yes, NFL Sundays move fast, and one big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. Live betting is the best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, and you can bet that on FanDuel. Last night, you saw the 45-year-old Phillip Rivers live against the Niners. I had him over 1.5 touchdown passes. And yes, you saw that happen with our friends at FanDuel. I got to bet that live in action, but also a parlay before the game as well. It's so much fun. It makes my football experience even better with our friends at FanDuel. You can bet the live spreads and, of course, the money lines. And if you really want to, the next touchdown score with our friends at FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. This may seem backwards to a lot of Nationals fans out there, but I'm going to explain to you why MacKenzie Gore and trading him might make this team even better in 2026. So let's start with the obvious here. I feel as if right now, the reason why you trade MacKenzie Gore is because it just feels as if that this team is not going to re-sign him. Just reading the tea leaves at this point, Scott Boras' client, number one. In 2 years from now, when MacKenzie Gore is a free agent in 2027, there is going to be a lot of questions, not just with the Nationals, but also in baseball as a whole. After this season, we expect a huge lockout that is going to, who knows what will happen in 2027, but I do feel as if that there will be a lockout and you will be seeing probably a shortened season. That is number one. So you really get a year and a half MacKenzie Gore, in my opinion. Number two, the value. The value of MacKenzie Gore is higher right now than what it will be at this year's deadline. And it will obviously be higher than what you get in next offseason when there will be a lockout and there will only be a half a season of MacKenzie Gore. And I think that obviously hurts your value for someone who is going to be a free agent after next offseason. That is something that I think a lot of teams and a lot of people right now really kind of sleep on. If you do wait for this year's deadline, you look at it and say, okay, well, you got a year and a half control left, which is obviously true there. But also, if there is a lockout in 2027, which if you ask anybody in the game, they all anticipate a lockout. It's hard to sell someone who is only going to be pitching for a team for maybe 100 games or 120 games. It's not going to be a full 162 in 2027. That is at least my opinion at this point. And I think that's a lot of people's opinions, by the way. But if you look at it also with the value of where it is right now and the way that this starting pitching market has gone, this is a seller's market for the Nationals when it comes to starting pitching. Number one, it's in demand. If you look at the free agency, the Blue Jays, they netted Dylan Cease. Michael King goes back to the Padres on a pretty good deal for them. But you could get the most bang for your buck this offseason compared to this year's trade deadline or even next offseason. You've got to make this move now. I think the starting pitching market, with the way that it has been moving, sets yourself up for a very good chance to get a great return for Gore and where he is today. Is it going to be that franchise-altering move? No. But also, going back to what we were just talking about, with guys like Toboni and Ani Kilambi coming over from the Philadelphia Phillies, an assistant GM under Dave Dombrowski, I do have a newfound confidence in this team getting the best possible package in return for MacKenzie Gore. And I think that if you were to look at a specific package like this, think of it this way. You're not going to get the 5 prospect list that you got for Juan Soto. I think no one's expecting that at this point. But I do think you can get 2 guys that will be very impactful, whether it be a starting pitcher and let's just say a first baseman. The Nationals can get 2 impactful prospects that can help this team in 2026 right now. If I were to tell you this, with what we know about MacKenzie Gore, who is a great pitcher, an all-star caliber pitcher, one of the best starting pitchers in the market right now, you could say that if you get a prospect that, let's say, delivers a 3.8 ERA or a 4.2, anywhere in that area, but also a bat that can generate, let's say, 20 home runs and has the ability to hit to 30 plus home runs in a season. Let's just say that you can do that. I would probably take the pitcher that's going to have like a 4.2 ERA and a bat that's going to hit 20 to 25 home runs in 2026 and hopefully beyond, and maybe even better then. I'm going to take those 2 guys over what MacKenzie Gore brings, because I think that right now, the biggest just kind of mistake that the Nationals could make is keeping on to MacKenzie Gore. I like MacKenzie Gore. I think he is going to be a great pitcher. I've said it time and time again. MacKenzie Gore, yes, ace potential, Cy Young potential when he's reaching his tip-top ceiling, one of the better left-handed starting pitchers in the game in my mind. But also, this is someone who impacts your team once every 5 games. If you can get a bat that helps your team 162 a year, and then also an arm that, let's say, is a middle rotation, maybe has the potential to be a number 2 or a number 1 down the road, you will take that trade package because you've got 7 years of control with those 2 guys. MacKenzie Gore, you've got 2 years left. And even then, one of those 2 years is going to be shortened with 2027 expecting a lockout. That is going to be a big deal for the Nationals. And I think that if there was a thought out there to not trade MacKenzie Gore because you think that you can get more value in return, I just don't think that's going to be the case. And I think that right now, the Nationals kind of have to strike when the iron's hot. The iron is hot right now. The starting pitching market is depleted. You have not really seen too many guys move. I think a lot of baseball fans and a lot of baseball execs out there are maybe looking at the Tigers and kind of seeing what they do with Skubal. That could be slowing down this market, but you could net multiple impactful players right now today, even regardless of a Skubal trade. And I think that right now, the best offer on the table is probably going to be better than anything that you could get at this year's deadline or even next offseason or even the next trade deadline in 2027. There is going to be a huge frenzy when it comes to next season and just how executives and how owners handle it and how the players handle it as well. You might as well get the best return for one of your better pitchers and one of your better players, your all-star caliber players like a Gore right now, because that move helps you so much more than having him pitch every 5 days. And I think that when it comes down to it, The value of trading MacKenzie Gore today is going to be better than what it will be come July 31st in 2026, and July 31st in 2027, or even in next offseason when you decide to hold on to him and trade him then. You've got to move on to him now, because I think that the value makes the most sense for what you should be getting. And if you are the Nationals, and if you're Paul Toboni, and if you're Ani Kilambi, you have to be thinking about value. What gets you the most back? And what gets you the most back? I'll answer that. It's this right now. You've got to make that move. And I feel as if that if the Nationals could get two impactful players who could be really good players down the road, two players, I'll always take better than one good player. So that's my philosophy on this. I'm interested to see if the Nationals do that. I do think the Nationals will ultimately trade MacKenzie Gore, but we'll see ultimately what Paul Toboni decides to do. But next, CJ Abrams is a different case. I think that CJ Abrams right now is probably the better candidate to hold on to. I'll explain why I feel that after this. In the midst of basketball season, and there is nothing like being in the building, the crowd, the energy, the moments you can't get watching from the couch, the only problem is getting tickets, and you can get tickets, the best tickets, with Game Time. And that is why Game Time is such a game changer. It puts the advantage back in the fans' hands and makes scoring great NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. The other day, I went to the Wizards game. I was pulling up to Capital One Arena, and I had my Game Time app. I saw the Flash Zone deals, which gives you the best deals on seats in the town. And yes, I got to see that live and in person. It was great watching the Wizards and also seeing a win, but also I got to see and save with our friends at Game Time. And when I saw the Game Time app, I got to see the views from my seats on my phone before I even bought the tickets, because we know Capital One Arena, it's going under construction right now. There's some obstruction in the arena, but I got to see the best view with our friends at Game Time. They gave me the best prices. And also, one of the best features about Game Time is that there is no surprise fees at checkout. You see the dollar amount right there, the value that we were just talking about. You can see it with Game Time, and there is no surprise fees. There's no added fees at the end of it. You can see that ticket and pay that exact dollar amount as you see on your screen with our friends at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Again, download Game Time and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. And we're back here on Locked On Nationals, as I think that right now, CJ Abrams and trading him at this point kind of makes no sense for the Nationals. And I think that holding on to him is probably your best value play. MacKenzie Gore and CJ Abrams, the trade discussions surrounding these guys, I think they've kind of been lumped together. And I think the obvious answer is, when you're traded for a Juan Soto kind of guy, you're always going to be in comparison to Soto. And that's just not fair. But even then, looking at Abrams and what he brings to the Nationals and the tip-top ceiling of what this guy could bring, I think there is actually a case that CJ Abrams could be a more valuable player to this team than a MacKenzie Gore, talking about their ceilings. In baseball nowadays, what's the biggest value play? I think it's that speed and power combination. You have seen CJ Abrams crush the baseball. Early on this season, CJ Abrams was a top 5 slugging metric in all of baseball for a good while there. For the first month of the season, he was 5th and 6th and 7th in that slugging department. And we saw the first half numbers back years here. He has put up some monster numbers and a huge effort to try to be an all-star caliber player. And we saw him being an all-star player in 2024. Ultimately, this season kind of fell off a little bit in the second half, as we saw in 2024 as well. But the value of Abrams, I think, is even greater than a MacKenzie Gore. You see guys like Elly De La Cruz, O'Neal Cruz, and Elly De La Cruz, all the different players out there that obviously help their respective teams do a lot better. I think that Abrams has so much more room for improvement than MacKenzie Gore. And I think the ceiling of Abrams, you just will not get the value in return for him right now that really what he could bring to your team today. I don't think Abrams is going to be a long-term shortstop. I just don't. I could be wrong. The Nationals may have something in store for him. Maybe they view him as an everyday shortstop. And if they do, great. Let's see the improvement. But if you don't, and let's say you move him over to second base, you could be talking about one of the best offensive second basemen in the game. And even then, with some key adjustments defensively, some maybe you work with him as a second baseman, but also as a shortstop, but also someone who can play in the outfield. Maybe he does improve defensively, and maybe you do make some tweaks with some of his mechanics and fix some of his throwing errors, and maybe he can stick at shortstop or be a good defensive second baseman. That is something that I think the Nationals will not be able to replicate because of what kind of tools he brings to the table. The reason why you have this new regime here, the reason why you invest in player development and invest in data and analytics and all the new tools in the building is so you can get the best out of players like CJ Abrams. And you also look down in the minor leagues with guys like Seaver King. You have guys in your system that are toolsy like that, and you invest in analytics and invest in player development so you can develop those players the best way possible. And I think that the Nationals can do just that with CJ Abrams, and that is why I would not trade him at this point. I think the best value play is to keep him and develop him. And if you think that you can't develop him, then we can have a conversation about trading him down the road. But the reason why you bring in guys like Kilambi and Toboni is because that you feel as if that you can develop players like Abrams. And I think that does make you a better team down the road. So thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. We are down to just 3 episodes a week now in this offseason format. I will talk to you guys on tomorrow's show, but then we'll have Christmas Day off. And then the 26th on Friday, we will talk again and talk about some Nationals baseball. So stay tuned. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.